We've got, is it Jason from St. Charles,
Yes.
Illinois?
Yes, sir.
I'm from St. Charles, Missouri. I didn't know there was a St. Charles in Illinois.
Awesome. Yeah, St. Charles, Illinois. That's a cool coincidence.
Sweet.
And just some like philosophical things, but then at this point now I'm trying to like get back into like backing up some of the things I think with science and reason and the building blocks. I think one of the things I said last week is I called in and I realized that the Big Bang, the philosophy is that we started from a singularity, and I guess that kind of would give me some validity to sometimes I think we're all one or we're all sort of related or interconnected somehow, and our origins may have been from this singularity and it expanded and it's continuing to expand, but in some way, we all sort of affect each other, and.
But how do you get from the Big Bang to we're all interconnected? I mean, apart from a certain poeticness to that view, I'm not aware of anything in the scientific understanding of the Big Bang that leads to us being interconnected in any way other than that, we're all made of matter and all operate according to the same natural laws. And then when we get to evolution, we maybe have a shared ancestry. But that's about it.
Well, some of the stuff, one of the scientific things that would back it up would be I don't know if you ever heard, you probably have, I don't know, but I just kind of recently came across something like the holographic universe, the model, that basically looks at there's fractal patterns that basically repeat themselves. You can kind of go all the way down to infinitesimal, almost infinitely. They're building that huge thing out in, I don't know what, Sweden or something like that, a huge particle accelerator.
The Large Hadron Collider?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest one that's ever been around. They're trying to go smaller and smaller. And basically it's you can continue to break it down infinitely small, and you'll be able to keep going smaller. Basically it's just this fractal pattern. It just gets smaller and smaller. And it's a repeating pattern. Or it gets larger and larger. So it just kind of basically just says everything is, it's almost like you're a hologram of on a micro scale of the larger macro scale. And just, I'm not sure how how that, with the New Age and everything else, what that means. It just kind of says to me that on some scientific level we're all sort of interconnected. And some people could probably blow that out of proportion, but I don't think it's cool to just totally ignore that and say, oh yeah, well we don't affect each other.
Well, of course we affect each other. I mean, the things that I do affect the other living people here, but that doesn't speak to any kind of interconnectedness in any kind of metaphysical sense.
Well, there's been some studies too where they took some molecules that are previously connected and then they separated them, and then they with electricity or whatever they did, they basically affected a part of the molecule that had been separated from the other part, and then it would basically have the same effect simultaneously. Say they reversed the direction, the other molecule would then reverse direction, and then
you're kind of describing an actual phenomenon in particle physics,
right?
But to my knowledge, having read up on that a bit, the one thing that they have so far found that you can't do with two particles that are, I forget what the technical term is, they're connected, right, in that way, where you do something to one and the effect happens to the other one. The one thing you can't use that for is to communicate any kind of information. I can explain in a very layman's way why this is true.
Okay.
Those individual particles are doing stuff all the time, right? And sure, you can bump into one, and that bump will have an effect on how the other one behaves. But there's no way the person looking at the other one at some great distance, there's no way they can tell what you've done, because it just gets lost in the noise of the random behavior of those particles.
There are a lot of things, a lot of theoretical, and I really despise kind of the use of that word, because theory in science is the vaulted graduation point, and yet we talk about theoretical physics. I'd say it's probably better to call them hypothetical explanations. In areas where we're investigating, where we really don't know, there are so many curious and bizarre things about the universe, and right now the answer is I don't know. And there may be a lot of really interesting theories, multiverses and holographic, but it's wrong to take these ideas and draw conclusions from them about the actual nature of the universe. It's not at that kind of graduation point yet, and it may never be. And we may find out that we were completely wrong about the thing that goes down one particular path. And so I don't want to speculate. There's a number of interesting ideas that I just think would be really cool, and the impact that they could have on the world that we live in and our understanding of the universe is enormous. It's almost beyond comprehension. And then there are things like what you referenced where you've got fractals and the concept of infinity and things like that.
Right.
Don't get bogged down in this notion of infinity and of thinking of it as a thing, or it is essentially everything, and I don't mean that in the sense that we're all connected that you're getting to. We are really bad at grasping the incredibly vast and the incredibly minuscule, and we're even worse at grasping concepts like infinity. We have some understanding of it. We can work with it, or at least know where we can't work with it, I guess would be a better way of putting it. But to take that kind of thing and extend it reminds me a lot of when I see movies like What the Bleep Do We Know, where they took a handful of quotations from experts in quantum mechanics and theoretical physics and things like that, and used that to build an idea very much like what you're talking about. If it weren't, I'd almost recommend you watch the movie, but before that, I'd recommend going out and reading the responses to the movie, because some of the people who were quoted in there were objected that their quotes were used in a way to support an idea that really has nothing at all to do with research. These are areas that a very, very, very small number of people actually understand or begin to understand, and yet they make their way into the public realm as neat ideas. I don't want to label them science fiction, but they are neat ideas akin, at least at this stage.
It's not science fiction because it's not even science. I mean, there's people out there, pricks like Deepak Chopra, who make billions, well, probably not billions, but vast amounts of money off of misrepresenting the implications of quantum physics. We know for a fact that the makers of the original film were dishonest because they used quotes from scientists out of context to make a case that those scientists themselves don't agree with.
Gotcha.
And as soon as you catch people having to cheat to make their point, you ought to start being really skeptical.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, one of the things I've noticed for myself is, like, I do a very questioning, it's like, I would like to know the different cosmic questions and stuff that, like, really compels me. But for a lot of times, in a certain way, almost like, it kind of feels like you're missing out on the moment, just by, you just concentrate on stuff that it's, like, almost, like, impossible to get answers to, it seems like. But I guess it's fun, too, it's just kind of fun to research stuff and like have these revelations. I mean, that's a dangerous word, but have like.
And you know what else is fun? Science fiction's fun, fantasy's fun. Things that take away. I've laughed at people who will sit around and contemplate their navel as a joke. That kind of meditation and introspection. I don't really mean to disparage it. There is some benefit to that. There may be a benefit to all things. Maybe one of the best things in the Bible is the idea that all things in moderation. That if you explore the universe and explore the things that interest you, no matter how time-wasting or silly they might seem to somebody else, but if you do it in a way that where you're not obsessing over something, or not giving too much credence to one idea or thought, or actually perhaps pre-thought, in the case of some of those, that it'll work out better. I gotta move on, Jason. I appreciate the call.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Okay.